Okay, hello guys. Welcome to a train of thought.
Yeah.
This one is very much a off the cuff one. Uh, why we don't necessarily have the best, or at least I don't have the best lighting right now.
Mm.
Mainly because I my computer is right next to a giant window. But
Mm.
we I could probably angle this better and look direct on, and it would work. But nah, why do sensible things?
Let's face it. I'm gonna shrink both of our images
Yeah,
anyway, and put a
but
silly picture of Poirot behind us, or next to us.
we're just going to discuss stuff.
Mm.
I had something that's been on my mind this morning. The new iPad Pro.
Oh, go on then.
I'll up front, I've not handled or seen one in person. I've just read specs. I use a 2017 iPad Pro myself, so I am two generations behind.
Mm.
The last one wasn't a good enough upgrade to really warrant it at all. This one is more interesting, but also it's an iPad.
Yeah.
Okay, before I get in, I love the iPad. I think it is one of the best. I do think it's one of the best pieces of technology in regards to it's my all-purpose device. It's not something I use. It doesn't do anything specifically for me, but it's the device that is outside of my phone, which obviously is my phone.
Mm.
It's the device that's probably in my hands. It's what I watch a lot of YouTube on it. I take notes on it. I probably don't use even this one to the fullest of its capabilities, but it is my. If I'm at home and I'm doing something on a computer, that's usually the computer I'm doing it on, unless it's recording like we are now, and obviously the computer comes out. Sometimes the laptop gets used, but my iPad is probably my all-purpose computer.
Mm.
And this year they've taken their new M1 chip that they've started putting into their computers. That has very powerful. It's very powerful by all accounts. Again, I've not used an M1 Apple computer, and they've stuck it in the iPad.
Mm.
So the iPad was already best in class tablet, especially the Pro models, right? Like
I'd say
nothing
as a in what you're describing in that realm
in
of
tablet.
tablet.
We're talking
Yeah,
tablets.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm not
I
saying it's a
think
best in class computer. I'm saying it's a best in class tablet.
no. I think there are tablets like say that because they can be used as a computer as well, there are arguments that certain markets.
You're thinking of the
It,
Surface,
I am thinking the Surface,
and
and I do think certain markets the Surface is possibly.
taking Surface Books out of the equation,
Mm,
which are laptops.
yeah.
I would still say no.
Mm,
They do run a full Windows 10, but
yep.
I think because if you're buying something of this form factor, you're mostly only going to be using it for word processing. I feel like, and if you are going to be throwing in photo editing and stuff, I think the iPad would probably handle tablet dedicated photo editing apps better than the Surface is ever going to handle Photoshop.
Probably yes.
Um,
Mm.
because for,
Although, yeah, I mean, and I think you're probably right there. Although I think
and
obviously Microsoft have spent quite a lot of money making sure that it's artist friendly. The more expensive ones, as standard, come
well,
with
because the
pens
Surface,
and stuff like that.
the
So,
whole Surface branding was to
mm,
appeal to and pull people back from Apple, right? That's
mm,
the whole Surface ecosystem is almost there to emulate the Apple ecosystem.
yeah, yeah, mm,
I get where you're coming from. If they do potentially lay a stronger claim to being actual computers than the iPad
mm,
does. Well, tell her. Okay, they lay a stronger claim to being because I think we need to get out of this realm of thought where we don't think of our phones and our tablets as computers. They might be different
Well,
types of
no,
computing, but
they are. I think they also like have but they have different
The
functions.
Surface probably lays a
And
better
they-
claim to running a more traditional desktop computer system.
Yeah,
Because
I think
it does,
that, like,
it runs Windows 10.
the Surface in theory is the closest thing to that all-round.
Have you
item.
seen the leaks of Windows 11?
No, I haven't.
It seems to be a step even closer to...
To Windows 3.1.
yeah, I was going to say Mac OS, but yeah, Windows 3.1 would be the accurate.
For those of you not old enough, go back, and if you do use Mac OS, like desktop Mac OS, it looks almost exactly the same.
And that's the thing, Windows evolved, Mac
yeah.
OS just decided, well, this works, why ever change it?
Yeah, they added a toolbar at the bottom that pops up if you like get too close to it, and then a couple of extra functions. But essentially,
But
the
Windows,
interface,
at least visually and UI, has been noodling their way back there, right?
Oh yeah. After trying many things and like
and I know Windows 10 isn't like this for everyone, but I basically have Windows 10 set up to run, for me at least, very similarly to how I run Mac OS, right? I use that taskbar and fill it full of the at the bottom and fill it full of the icons I use the most.
yeah.
So I use Windows 10, and while Windows 10 is very different to Mac OS, I use it in a very similar way. Because I've got a decade into being a Mac OS user, it's how I work now.
And I think that's the thing. I mean, with modern operating systems as well, there is a certain amount that you can play around with, where you drop things and how you use them and how you get to them and stuff like that. I don't like to clutter my toolbar at the bottom too much, which is why I keep it like I'm a Mac desktop user. I tend to keep a lot of mine hidden behind in Launchpad.
So
just press the button and there it is.
See, I'm not really a Launchpad user at all.
Yeah. Whereas I also
But again, I wonder how much me not
really-
being a Launchpad user is down to me also being a heavy iOS user, and I'm just used to having everything at a very quick...
Yeah, you see, I hate a messy desktop. I hate not having folders and stuff like that. I know obviously on iOS you can have folders.
I'm
but
very much... My iOS is heavily folded.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would folder them down if I were to have. I do have an iPad. I have an early-ish generation Mac iPad Mini.
Do you still have that?
It's somewhere.
I imagine it's running at a crawl these days, but
I haven't used it in ages. So
yeah, I'm tempted to say that's the first Mini, maybe the second Mini.
It may have been the Gen 2.
Yeah,
but it was certainly no newer than Gen 2. So.
See, I will say iOS has come a long way since then.
Oh yeah, and I mean I have used iOS since then, and like.
And to be fair, iPads don't use iOS anymore.
No.
In so much as they use their own flavour of iOS called iPad OS.
Yeah, it's a specifically tweaked form.
Yeah, it's not that they're literally running pretty much the same thing nowadays. They customize it for iPad now. But getting slightly back onto the point I was... So, yeah, the iPad, even like... To be fair, even my 2-generation old iPad Pro is probably has more headroom than near enough any tablet out there. And part of that is because they've always... The chips they've put in, and it's why I think they've had such success with their own chips in the computers now, right? Like... They
might do. They haven't had chips in their computers for when we say computers, I'm talking about laptops and desktops.
But the resounding view of the M1 chip that is now in the Mac Mini, some of the Mac Pros, the MacBook Air, and the new iMac is that it's excellent. Like,
which is odd, isn't it? I mean, it doesn't seem that long ago that Apple essentially abandoned having not exactly their own chips, but those IBM
were
ones.
never their own chips.
No, but they did have like kind
they
of
moved to
IBM
Intel because Intel was making better chips than the company that made PowerPC chips was making.
Well, it was IBM, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, who like oddly enough are still around, and yet you'd never really hear about them outside of like business.
It's the market.
Yeah.
So Intel were making better chips, so we moved to Intel. The problem is Intel have started being throttled now, and don't seem to be as many places for them to expand. So rather than look for another manufacturer, Apple's just gone, well, we've been making our own chips now for phones and tablets for years. Why not just go the whole hog?
Yeah.
It's led to amazing battery life in laptops, like unheard of laptop battery life.
I suppose it's that, like, I mean, we've talked about it before with maybe not on this show or even recorded it, but one of the reasons that Mac OS has always appeared, at least, to be more stable and more efficient than its Microsoft counterparts is because, in theory, there's a finite number of variations of chipsets and things like that you can have for those for that software, and therefore that means that Apple have historically known exactly what's going to be asked of from the software. Whereas obviously
their phones are supported for a lot longer. Because I mean, last year, and I even think this year, which again, it surprised me last year, it's surprising me again this year. The iPhone 6s is still getting iOS 15.
Is it?
Yeah, that isn't by phone standards.
That's
there's a whole conversation on whether you should expect tech to last longer than it actually does. But by phone standards, and now how well it's going to run it is a.
I mean, that's the other thing. I think like.
But it runs iOS 14 okay, and even then, iOS 14 was like a really. Apple support their handsets for a lot longer than any other phone manufacturer. Flagship Samsungs you tend to get 2 years out of. Android handsets that aren't flagships are basically on the operating system they released with, and that's what you get. While and part of it is like when you're making the hardware and the software and an infinite amount of hardware and software, right? You compare Apple's output a year phone wise to a lot of other phone manufacturers. Samsung put 7-8 phones out a year, maybe more. They put their flagships out, but they've got other mid-ranges as well. Apple release a set of flagship phones every year. They might occasionally throw in a budget model that's a parts bin phone, because as good as their so again, things like the iPhone SE are great phones, but it is Apple going, well, we've got all these parts. Let's make a slightly more up-to-date version of an older phone and sell it as a budget variant. Like the SE is fundamentally an iPhone 8 running the chipset of the iPhone 11. So it's just an iPhone 8 made a bit more modern. And they sell it at £350 instead of the £700 of the iPhone 12. Like it's the closest you get to a budget product from Apple. Because it's generally a market they have no interest in. It's why you have that perception of Apple being expensive and more expensive than other manufacturers, is just because we don't make a cheaper alternative.
They don't make a cheaper alternative, and the aftermarket value is
aftermarket value stays. But for like, if you compare the latest flagship Samsung to the latest flagship iPhone, then they're pretty much on par. You compare a MacBook Pro to an equivalent Dell or a Surface, and they're pretty much on par. Like it's just you look at Windows laptops and there's a whole bunch of under £500 options.
Because it's not just obviously the Microsoft produced ones. There's all sorts of companies that
it's like those new headphones Apple released, right, for £550 headphones. That every review basically just came out with, God damn it, I wish they weren't this good, because they shouldn't be this much. They're excellent and they're kind of worth it, but they're not worth it. And potentially Apple is adding value to them now as well, being they work fully with Apple Music's new, because again, in a move that could force hands in the music industry, Apple just basically launched lossless and spatial audio and Dolby Atmos audio on a bunch of music in the Apple Music catalog
Yeah.
and not charging any more for it. Like some of the other streaming services, if you want the high quality lossless audio, you pay extra per month for it.
Pay a premium for it. Yeah.
Apple have just gone, yeah, we're changing the Apple Music library to support these formats. We're adding Dolby Atmos and spatial audio to artists who want it there, and it's the same price.
But then they've been very good with that. Obviously a similar thing with the 4K stuff on iTunes.
Yeah, generally for the most
obviously,
part, when a film gets upgraded to 4K, if you own that film, you get the upgrade. No other like digital library is doing that. Amazon, it's a new listing. There isn't as many options over here for buying films as there is in, say, the US. Over in the UK, you've got Amazon, you've got iTunes, and then you're getting into smaller ones like Roku, and there's a few others. But
I mean, that's if you're buying digitally, obviously.
Yeah, obviously if you're buying discs.
Still buying discs, then it's a different.
Buying from anywhere. But it's like Indiana Jones just got 4K upgrades, right? And I was going to buy the box set, but it's £80. It's $19.99 for the same 4 films on iTunes. And why, yes, technically the discs would look marginally better. Apple's streaming the 4K is probably the best out of any.
Oh yeah.
Like,
I think the thing
compared to like the Netflix 4K or Amazon 4K, which sometimes a good Blu-ray can look better than it. iTunes 4K is generally very good.
Yeah. I think it is something they've managed to get very well.
Indiana Jones looks very nice in 4K HDR, by the way. Raiders.
I imagine it does.
I believe it's the same. It's the master they did for that IMAX screening we went to cinema to see.
That was lovely.
It was.
I do. To be honest, that is probably something I would actually fork out the money for once I have a 4K Blu-ray player. Which won't be until I get a PlayStation 5.
See, I've dabbled with 4K Blu-rays and I've dabbled with digital, and I've lent each way at various different points. But I'm starting to tip back to digital because I know we say, if you get digital, you don't own it, and for companies reserve the right to remove the stuff at any time. But disc rot is a genuine thing that happens. And
I think the thing is, like, I wouldn't necessarily. I mean, I'd never have. I say never have. I used to work in a Blockbuster, and so I got access to literally thousands of cheap DVDs. So during the DVD era, when I could get something for under £1, then I did get quite a lot. I have maybe 500 DVDs.
Yeah.
But Blu-ray wise, my collection is very much more a case of it's the stuff I love, like really, really love, and therefore I've bought them because it's something I want to be able to hold and touch, and it's not even necessarily that I mean, like, say something like some things I may even own it digitally as well as the physical copy, but it's just because I want that tactile.
I'm going to put a pin in the flag of physical versus digital media here, and we're going to come back to it because I just want to go back a sec and finish the point I wanted to make about
sorry.
iPads.
Well, I mean, this is train of thought, so
I know, which is why I'm putting a pin, and we're going to come back because I think the rest of the episode can be about this. But the M1 iPad, right? Crazy powerful. Like, crazy powerful. The headroom on it is, if you go for one of the larger storage capacities of 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte, it has 16 gig of RAM in it. First time Apple has ever told us the RAM officially of what's in any iPad this year. The lower storages have 8 gig, the higher storages have 16 gig. To the point where apparently some people have done tests and you can just keep apps open and it will quick resume. It manages to keep enough anything in the memory.
But then saying that, I mean, I think it's probably a bit like I mean, obviously we've covered it with the games console.
Quick resume,
like, obviously there's quick resume, but the thing is that, like, when you've got a solid state hard drive, in theory, you don't need as much RAM if they're going to talk to each other correctly. So obviously,
also upgraded the USB-C port to being a full Thunderbolt port. So you can now power Apple's 6K Pro monitor off of the iPad and dual screen them.
Yeah,
and it's like, because Apple do push for, you don't need a computer. An iPad can be your computer, and to a certain extent, yeah, it can. But like, you've got this much power in it, but it's still iPad OS, and I like iPad OS, but this is too much. Like, no, like, it's one of the smoothest tablet experiences you could ever expect. Yeah, because it's running a chip with 8 cores.
Yeah,
you compare it to most Android tablets, and like, it's
and a custom built chip as well, which again, as we said, it's going to be incredibly efficient when it comes to running the things that it's been built to run for.
And like, you can dump a ton of raw image files and you could edit them on there, especially if you've got the Apple Pencil and stuff. There is lots. They call it the iPad Pro, and there's lots of pro ways you can use it. There is, but it's still not living up to what it could be. And I'm someone who, again, I said at the start, I'm someone who generally loves the iPad. I think I've had one since the 2nd gen iPad. I've gone through several of them at this stage. I think the current iteration is the best it's ever been. Whether even my Pro, because the current design has been the same for the past 3 models, basically now. The 12-inch version of the new iPad has micro LEDs, so if you're watching those HDR films, apparently they look amazing. Apparently, a combination of the AirPod Maxes with spatial audio and watching a film on the iPad is apparently nigh on cinematic.
Well, I mean, it's big enough that if you're watching it close enough, it's the same as having a 65-inch screen.
Yeah,
so
it's feeling. If you've got a 12-inch screen here, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just sat in front of a 15-inch laptop monitor at the moment, but I'm what, a foot and a half from it.
Yeah.
So it's completely eclipsing my 45-inch TV, which is not that far away from me.
And
so
you couple that with headphones that are simulating Dolby Atmos surround sound.
Yeah.
And
I mean, well, again, I mean, we've seen similar with what Sony's doing with the PlayStation 5. That you've the sound, I suppose, in this technical generation actually is where it's finally kind of having a little leap again, because I think like we've to jump temporarily to games consoles, I think we have kind of reached that point now where there's a certain level of graphical realism that's been reached that it's going to be hard to now, especially with facial animations and stuff like that, to reach that next big jump. So obviously Sony's taken the thing of like, well, let's make sure that people are listening to it correctly, and that will help immerse you a bit more. And I think obviously Apple's doing a similar thing, which when you can create that entire ecosystem yourself, so that everything works in sync. I mean, really, like, Apple in some ways have more in common with games console manufacturers in a way than they do with a PC sort of thing, in the fact that they are purpose built, especially now that they've got their own chipsets going in there as well, that they're making themselves. I know that Sony and Microsoft don't make their own for the games consoles, but they are specifically designed for them. They've Apple have made almost a bespoke product for themselves. So you do get something that has potential.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I think for, again, if you're somebody who wants to, and I think there's a reason Apple is really the only successful manufacturer of tablets. Samsung makes some, but I don't think they have a massive amount of success there. But no, the Android tablet as a thing, as either outside of being a very cheap thing, an Amazon thing, or Samsung trying to compete at the higher end, the Android tablets died. It's not a.
It still exists a lot in business. Like I use nothing but tablets and small Android powered.
But yeah, they still power PDAs. But I meant as a consumer, tablet product, they just and that's because they never really ran well. And
again, I think that's the thing that, like, the problem with Android ones was, unless you were buying the premium, probably Samsung produced tablet, you were never going to get even remotely close to what Apple could give you on almost any of their tablets.
And even when you're paying that much for a premium Samsung, you're at that 800 mark for a high-end Samsung tablet.
Yeah.
Unless you really, really want Android on your tablet. You're probably better off spending your money on the iPad. And I don't think part of that is I don't think Android scales up as well to tablet size screens. I've used Android tablets, and I don't. I think it's lack of, for better or worse, iOS is clean. Its lack of customizability in some ways can be in its favour. Yeah, the point I was really just wanting to make was, and especially with the announcement that it looks like this year's OS update, so iPad OS 15, iOS 15, the new Mac OS, the new Apple TV OS, they're all, it's a small bump, Nothing major is happening under the hood with the software this year. So I think Apple announced these big all-powerful iPads, and I think there's thought that, when the software's announced, maybe we'll see how we're going to take advantage of it. And the answer was, they're not.
No.
And
I think,
and again, they have to obviously have a clear delineation, right? If the iPad really could handle everything that MacBook Pro could, and they're running the same hardware, because now that they're running the same hardware, right? The same M1 chip, and I know there's other things that play into it a little bit. Obviously, a laptop has slightly better cooling, so it can potentially run that chip to a faster kind of rate than an iPad.
Well, it'd be more consistent.
Yeah, but then the iPad has this really high, especially the 12-inch one, this really crazy high-end screen with micro LEDs. The MacBook Pro doesn't. You can buy that full keyboard case now for the iPad with a trackpad. That if the iPad then could do everything that macOS could, what becomes the point? And this is going to become even more difficult with them unless they start making multiple computer chips, because everything right now is VM1. As they release a higher spec iMac, a higher spec a Mac Pro, if fundamentally under the hood these are all running VM1 or that year's equivalent, where's the price increase coming from? What's the reason to buy? Obviously, an iMac makes sense, it's a bigger screen, right? That might be the reason to buy that. But if you've got a 12-inch iPad Pro that's got a touchscreen and pencil support and a keypad with a mouse and a MacBook Pro, and they're both fundamentally running the same hardware, a software limitation has to be the only reason to not buy that over that. Because we know the power's there to do it. There's no doubt about that now. They're running the same chip. So there's no doubt that in theory the hardware is there to run full-fledged macOS on an iPad. Now, I don't could be made to say that macOS is not designed for touchscreen
No, it isn't. And I
it's
think,
not.
well, I mean,
Although
they
have
went out.
ported like certain things on macOS now look and operate in a similar way to iOS.
They do, but they've still. But I think a lot of that is the aesthetic rather than the interaction. Like they stated from the beginning that they don't want to put touch screens onto their laptops because they don't like the feel of it. Like I mean, to be honest, I mean my wife's laptop.
They sell you a keyboard that turns your touchscreen into a full-on. That basically.
Yeah, but you see, that's turning your keyboard into a laptop. That's turning your
tablet into a laptop as opposed to your laptop.
The thing is, that's still something they don't necessarily want you to do, and I do agree to an extent. Like
they do want you to do it though, because they simply dance about the product.
No, well, they don't want you to necessarily do it because they don't want to necessarily change Mac OS.
They don't want Mac OS to be workable there.
Yeah, and I think that, like, as I was going to say, that like I still find it a bit weird using my wife's laptops. Both of her laptops are touch screens.
Yeah.
Like, actually, there's something about it that does feel a bit wrong. Like, it just doesn't feel like, I don't know. I can't even.
I'm with you. I don't necessarily want a touchscreen laptop. That said, if mouse support was good enough, and mouse support is interesting on the iPad, and there is one feature that I think I told you about, but I don't think again we've ever talked about it on channel of the new iPads, the new iOS, iPad OS and Mac OS, where you can just drop your iPad now next to your Mac.
Yeah.
And move your mouse from one to the other, both running independently on their own operating systems. If your keyboard is there, it will type on whatever screen
the cursor is on.
So but it means that, say you'd been drawing something on your iPad and you were wanting to do something with it on your computer, you can just drag it on your iPad and drop it over.
Yeah.
And again, I'm in the boat where I don't think iPad should run macOS. I don't.
No, I don't. I think that, like, actually,
I think we could do more with iPad OS though.
No, I think there's certainly a case that it's more about that ecosystem. I mean, we've talked about it before when we talked about phones and the fact that, like, if you own Apple products like an Apple desktop or a laptop or something like that, like, I've never had an iPhone. There was something about it. I didn't like iOS, but like I couldn't tell you why, but I just didn't like it. And yet I love my Mac. But now the next phone I do get probably will be an iPhone. I mean, it might not be this year, but it probably will be an iPhone.
Yeah.
And simply because the integration, the way that they communicate between the systems, how easy it is to get your photos or videos or what have you from one to the other.
Right?
Exactly. It's so, like, it's just so easy.
Sending stuff to fellow Apple users as well, just like.
Exactly. I mean, for us, like, doing this channel, it could suddenly get significantly easier if we've got certain other little toys that we can throw at each other. So, like, I'm just having to turn the oven down. And I think for the iPad Pro in particular, as you were saying with, like, iOS or iPad OS or whatever it is, that there is that little frustration in that the operating system itself somewhat limits it. But I think if there's, obviously you've got those nice little things like drag and drop with images or files or what have you and stuff like that now, on a grander scheme with some of Apple's bigger pieces of software, like I want to see a Final Cut app, a companion app.
I was watching someone who ran. They used iMovie to render on the last generation, not mine, the one after mine. So the last generation iPad Pro, it rendered the film in 17 minutes, which is very good.
Yeah.
The new M1 chip, iMovie rendered the video in 12 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, it's.
I mean, the thing is, like, I mean, there's already integration between iMovie and Final Cut. Even if it's just a case of like on the Pro, that iMovie has, they shout about it a bit more, that you can do some work on the tablet on iMovie, and then you can instantly move that to Final Cut on your desktop.
Even if just in a more traditional filming world, so not what we do, but in a more, you could use an iPad to prepare dailies.
Yeah, you could, because I mean the thing is that you don't have to necessarily even bother about worrying about things like color grading or stuff like that. I mean, I know it's in theory capable of doing all that powerful stuff, but like the thing is, and obviously it's got the screen that you'd be able to see all those beautiful colors. But if it's literally just a case of like dragging and dropping and doing a very quick edit and seeing the dailies and stuff like that, and being able, and then saying, yeah, that's great. I like this rough edit. Let's like throw that over to Final Cut and the guys in the office. There
are two Apple products that I don't think we'll ever see, but I think would be my most wishful things they would make. A new Final Cut Studio, but what Studio means this time is it's a combination of a Mac app and an iPad app.
Yep.
So it's and you can still just buy X on its own if you don't have an iPad. So it will be a little bit more expensive for the Studio version, but you're getting a custom designed Final Cut for iPad that's fully compatible with going between that and the full or singing or dancing version on your Mac OS device.
Yeah.
Charge $100 more for it, I don't know, and call it Final Cut Studio. And Studio in this case is multiple devices as opposed to multiple softwares. Second thing I would love to see from Apple,
potentially access to those multiple softwares as well, like having Motion and having like the After Effects and stuff. Although to be honest, they've all sort of been eaten up by Final Cut X anyway, but like they do still exist. But
the other product I would love to see is a more consumer-based product. Is now we've got rid of a big HomePod and we've just got the HomePod Mini. Re-releasing new bigger HomePod, but rather than one that's designed for music, you build Apple TV into it, and it's fundamentally it's an Apple soundbar.
Yeah,
with all the audio tech from the old big HomePod, so it can run Dolby Atmos. That your HDMI into your telly has Apple TV built into it. So it's an Apple TV device that's also a HomePod device. Again, I think that would be a perfect device.
You see, I mean, I'd potentially even go slightly a step further than that. And I like one of the things that we like years ago thought about getting was the iPad, the Mac Mini server. And I'd love to see something like that come back that like could potentially just sit in a room, not even necessarily connected to a monitor or anything, but talk to all of your devices and be that like storage dump, that offline storage dump.
I don't think it's needed in the current ecosystem.
I don't think it's necessarily needed, but I think it might be.
It could, again, that could be useful for a pro atmosphere, but for a consumer-based system, especially with how Apple products currently work, no.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it'd be that kind of... I'm more thinking like I hate to use this term, but the prosumer kind of thing. So for me and you, that sort of stuff. That
I even wouldn't really have any use for...
Well, I mean, I don't need a Mac Pro. I don't particularly want to get a new iMac Pro or something like that. I don't need anything like that. But if I did, I would be tempted if I could get something like the Mac Mini server, an up-to-date one, and that obviously had a nice big hard drive in it, and an iPad Pro. Because then I could tinker. I could doodle.
When I have a terabyte of iCloud storage space, anyway.
Yeah, there is that.
Like I say, in the world before cloud storage was such an important part of the ecosystem, it had a place. When cloud storage is such a major part of the ecosystem, I just think it has less of a place.
Yeah, I still think there's there's room for like offline stuff, because I think again, if you're doing the work, it's easier to do it offline than it is on than it is. Sorry,
Yeah,
it's easier to do it. Yeah,
that's what hard drives are for.
yeah, I know. Yeah,
And even like, if you plug some hard drives into a Mac Mini, you kind of got what you want anyway.
true, especially modern fast ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the thing is, like, I mean, we've made this.
And you've actually, doing it that way, you've got something more customizable on your end than just the server with a hard drive in.
I mean, you do, but
it's not.
You know, these are companies that we're talking about who will quite happily sell you anything if they,
but it's
they
not
can get away with it. So
build your own server.
No, it isn't. No, I could do if I could be bothered.
Couple points, leaving the Apple conversation behind, because I know we've got to go soon.
Yep.
There's just finally one point I wanted to make about physical storage media. DVD needs to fucking die.
It fucking does.
And DVD is the reason why digital for 4K is way more of a tempting option, right? When quite frequently you can go onto iTunes and buy a 4K HDR film for $3.99, and you never get, outside of finding some second-hand offers or some very cheap films no one wants to buy, you never get 4K physical discs really for less than 15, and that's because Blu-ray and DVD exist. Because DVD is still this cheap bottom layer that refused to die, Blu-rays can't drop down to replace it, which means 4K has to remain a high-priced niche. And 4K was always going to be a niche product.
Yeah.
But it has to be right at the top of a price scale because you have to have room for Blu-ray and DVD. If DVDs were sitting in if Blu-ray was sitting in where DVD is now, and 4K was sitting where Blu-ray was, it would be a much more affordable price wheel kind of thing.
Much more appealing.
Yeah. But a new 4K disc is usually £20, sometimes £25.
Yeah.
And they only ever drop as low as about 15. Which means picking up physical 4K media is expensive.
It is, and I think that's, as I said before,
a brand new 4K release on iTunes is usually $9.99, maybe $12.99 at a push. Never any more than that.
No.
So it becomes.
But I mean,
and especially with iTunes, because it isn't. While there is a difference, it's not a crazy difference between the physical disc and the physical release. That is that physical release worth that much more? It's like Amazon has got a Prime Day sale on at the moment.
Yeah.
I guess you could shop there, but try not to shop with Amazon. I'm guilty of it, but smaller companies deserve your money.
I do it every now and again, especially when I forget my best friend's birthday and have to send him a last minute package. With a surprise Robert in it.
Yeah, a robot called Toby. Or Tubby.
Yeah.
I haven't built it yet, but it is in my
to-do list.
Building station.
I
was
thinking of getting you something outrageous, and then that just turned up, and it was like, that looks all right. So.
I appreciate it. It looks fun.
Unfortunately, we don't have such daft things on our Amazon as they do in the States, where like you can buy like a 100 kilograms of carrot shaped like squirrels or something like that.
But so Indiana Jones DVD box set was on offer at I think £10.
Yeah.
The Blu-ray box set was on offer at £20.
Yeah.
And then obviously the 4K one isn't on offer because it's only just come out, but that's £80.
Yeah.
Just because DVD never died.
Yeah.
And how old is DVD now?
Actively, it would have been the early 2000s. It's actually like 1995 or something.
Released in late 1996.
Yeah. But I mean, most people didn't use it until the PlayStation 2.
No, but it came out late 96, so that's its birth.
Yeah.
So
it's 25 years old.
Yeah, that's just... I mean,
it's time to die.
I know, obviously, we have upscaling and stuff, but if you've got anywhere close to a modern, slightly large television, your DVDs can't look that good on it.
Well, you say that.
Upscaling can help, but...
In part of my Star Trek full rewatch, I didn't have the Star Trek films on Blu-ray at the time. I did have, but I did have the DVD box set, and it was a box set that came out towards the end of what you'd hope would have been the natural lifespan of DVD. I mean, once Blu-ray was out, but
Blu-ray came out in 2006.
Yeah.
DVD really should be dead.
Oh yeah. But I mean, the towards the end of DVDs, they were working some magic, a bit like games manufacturers do at the end of a console life, where especially like first party titles, where it's like, how the hell are they doing that? So I watched a couple of the Star Trek films, and through, like, again, it was on it's a Blu-ray player that upscales to 4K. Then onto my TV, and my TV I think was doing a little fettling as well. And to be honest, it looked fantastic. The sound, it was incredible, because that was at the time when they really, again, it was the end of a technological period, so they'd gone to town on sound. But yeah, they should.
And that's the thing, sound is where physical will always have the advantage. Streaming can't do sound as well as disc can. But, like, there's the argument to be made that, but I don't want to spend Blu-ray or 4K money, I want to spend DVD money, which is fine. But, if DVD was dead already, Blu-rays would be at DVD prices.
Then you could do that. And it's you people out there who say, yes, I want a 65-inch 4K HDR TV, and then buy a bloody DVD because it's half the price.
We're not judging anyone, I would like to point out. Oh, man. I am going to be dark in this video.
I am judging. Again, I used to work in a video shop. I worked there for 10 years. I know the type. I judge them every single day. There's special places in the afterlife for people like you.
On that note of judgment, we shall leave you on this train of thought. We hope you've enjoyed our discussion of Apple and physical media. We didn't know what we were going to discuss when we started this. Apologies for what I think is going to be a dark video, but
that's all right.
It's only the audio is what matters.
It is, yeah.
So we'll see you next week for what I think will be a review in our Before the MCU series, just a one-off, where we will be looking at Mystery Men.
Yes, because James hasn't seen it since the cinema.
No, I mostly just remember it being about spoons.
It was pretty much, yeah. Spoons and only being invisible when you can't, when no one's looking at you.
I'm very much looking forward to watching it. If anyone wants to watch it beforehand, so we can watch along, it's on a Prime Video at the moment. That's where we'll be watching it. After I just told you not to use Amazon. But it feels unavoidable in the modern day and age.
Or buy it.
But you know what? Maybe we lift Jeff. Maybe we lift. Where are you gonna go? Where are you gonna go and buy Mystery Men in today's day and age? But Amazon.
And sadly, it'd be on DVD.
HMV's website, maybe.
Yeah, Zavvi.
You might find it in HMV if you found a HMV or a FOP.
Anyway.
But I will leave us on
this note. Don't buy physical media if you're only going to get DVDs. Try to avoid Amazon.
Maybe we leave
see you next week.
Jeff Bezos in space. See you next week.
Goodbye.